8:31, and that means it's time for another Coffee Chats with Economic Alliance Snohomish County. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gary Clark. I am President and CEO of Economic Alliance Snohomish County, coming to you with another Coffee Chats. And as you all know, if you have your coffee cup or water or whatever you're drinking this morning, I ask that you raise it up in solidarity with me today. Okay, welcome. And now we have the opportunity to dive into some housekeeping. So folks, please join the conversation via chat and ask questions. This is going to be very interactive today. There's going to be some direct engagement opportunities to go back and forth with questions. And so please feel free to loosen up and engage. And additionally, please add your organizational adherence to your name so that we know who you're with. We just want to make sure that we know if you're part of an organization that you have it connected. So please add that. All right, and moving on, I get the distinct pleasure to introduce Triangle's Andrew Gordon McLean. He is the Education and Outreach Specialist, and he is also accompanied by some very astute folks. So Andrew, I am going to throw this to you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much, Gary. And so, yes, so we've got today I'm going to be talking for around, well, on and off. I'll start with a brief 15-minute introduction about the tax structure work group, who I'm here on behalf of. And today, really, the idea today is to generate a lot of conversation and a bit of understanding and talk about these scenarios that this tax structure work group have been working on. I thought I would just take a minute now just to introduce a few of my colleagues who will be answering just some more technical questions. And so that is Morgan from Echo Northwest, Morgan Shook. He is.
Hi, Eddie.
And Valerie Torres and Braden Fraser, who are here from the Department of Revenue, who will also be just taking in some more some more technical questions you may have. So I really want to encourage everybody. I love this idea of a coffee chat to engage and to discuss things today. I'm just going to share my screen. Well, welcome to this interactive session, which is going to be exploring your feedback about and then opinions about options for the future of Washington State's taxes. The overall tax structure has not changed much in over 80 years, and the economy and state have changed dramatically in that time. So the legislature just determined that it was time to take a look at what could be updated or changed. And that really brings me here to why we're here. Well, rather, we're here joining in your coffee today, this morning, and we really want to hear your interests, values, preferences about Washington State's taxes. So this is a really interactive session. Even if you are not an expert around taxes, please ask questions, state your opinions. That's why we're here today. We really want to hear from you as a taxpayer or business owner about your opinions. We'd like to hear which parts of the proposed changes you might find confusing, so that we can improve future discussions. And the feedback that are going to be generating through this and a survey, which I'll be sharing with you in a minute or a little bit later on, will be used to inform changes to the Washington State's tax structure. So for today's conversation, first of all, just for these first 15 minutes or so, I'm going to be giving you a brief background about Washington State's taxes. We're then going to be having really, for most of the time, really a discussion about different tax ideas that the tax structure work group have worked on for the future, and then some wrap up and next steps as well. So as I'm sure you are all very civilized conversation around over a coffee, but just want again reiterate there are no wrong answers here. So for you all to kind of speak up and to hold space for others, and also just if other people have different, particularly if other people have different ideas and opinions from your own, just that we respect those opinions and we give each other space during this time. Some technical ground rules is that I just encourage everybody to stay on mute unless speaking, to submit questions for presenters kind of via the chat. And it is actually fine, sorry, it says slightly different from what it says on the slide there, but it is fine as well if you would like to speak, just to use the raise hand function. So just to kind of start that off, what is one word or phrase that comes to mind when you hear the word tax? So this will be very interactive today, so you can add that into the chat. What is one word or phrase that comes to mind when you hear the word tax? So if you enter into, okay, so I've got infrastructure being entered in there. Necessary is something else that's coming on. So thank you, Mishu, and from Karen. Okay, equity is coming through from Brian. Community, economic growth for state. Okay, revenue. So and a few different opinions. Investment, penalty, theft. So yeah, so I can see we have a kind of a debt. So a wide kind of variety of opinions here, which is great. This is really what we're wanting to see. So I'm now just going to kind of give you a little bit of introduction about what the tax structure work group is. And so this is a, as you'll see in a video I'm about to show you, this is a cross-party work group that is looking into Washington, the future of Washington state's taxes, so that it better serves the people of Washington. And here's just a brief video which will give you some background.
So what is the Tax Structure Work Group anyway? The Tax Structure Work Group is a collection of policymakers working together to develop recommendations for making Washington's state tax structure more equitable, more fair, stable, adequate, and transparent. The group isn't looking to increase or decrease the total amount of tax money collected by the state. It's just looking at the combinations of tax types that could generate the same amount of tax money. The group is only investigating different types of taxes with the goal of improving Washington's tax structure, not a change in overall tax revenue. There are a whole lot of different taxes like city, county, special district, tribal, and even federal, but this group is charged with only looking at Washington's state taxes. So who's in the Tax Structure Work Group? The Tax Structure Work Group is made up of Washington state legislators, both Democrats and Republicans, along with representatives from the Governor's Office, Department of Revenue, the Association of Washington Cities, and the Washington State Association of Counties. The Tax Structure Work Group wants to hear from you to understand your priorities when it comes to taxes. Take a moment and let your voice be heard. Take the survey and tell the Tax Structure Work Group how to improve state taxes.
So just continuing from there, where are we in the process? So this is a kind of a longer process that we're in, and so last year the kind of economic research was carried out, and this was really looking into different scenarios for the future of Washington state's taxes. Right now in 2021, we're kind of here. We are really kind of coming out, and this is why we're involved in these discussions. And we're really engaging communities and businesses and getting their feedback. Next year, that feedback and the research will be going into will be informing the policy development. And the idea is that in 2023, there'll be a legislation. As things stand, a lot of background economic research has been done, but right now it's really important for us to collect feedback from communities and businesses. So we will have more chance to interact and discuss this in a minute. So if you have questions, you can put them into the chat, write them down as well as they come up. And I'm now just going to show you a video about part of the reason of why the idea of updating Washington State's taxes.
The Tax Structure Workgroup is exploring changes to Washington state tax structure. This workgroup is asking, is our state tax system equitable and fair? Is it stable? Is it adequate? Is it transparent? But what do those terms really mean? Let's break it down. First, fairness. A fair or equitable tax system is one that is fair to people and to businesses. A fair tax structure must consider different viewpoints of fairness. One view of fairness is that those individuals and businesses with higher incomes or revenue should pay a higher percentage of their income or revenue in taxes, and those with lower incomes or revenue should pay a lesser percentage through graduated or progressive rates, targeted tax credits, or exemptions. This view of fairness considers the capacity of a taxpayer to pay the tax. Another view of fairness is that all individual and business taxpayers should pay the same percent of their income or revenue in taxes, regardless of their income, through flat taxes or the same tax rate applied to all individuals and the same rates for all businesses. This view of fairness considers the consistency of the tax structure. The Tax Structure Workgroup is considering changes to the tax system that would create a balance of these different views of fairness. Next is stability. That means the tax system provides a reliable amount of money even with ups and downs in the economy. Transparency means that taxpayers know when to pay taxes, the amount they need to pay, and how to make those payments. And adequacy. The tax system needs to collect enough tax revenue to pay for established public services.
So just continuing from there, I have a brief question as we just kind of wrap up this kind of overview. I am seeing I'm just going to one question I'm seeing in the chat is the agenda of the work group to advocate for an income tax? It's not. It's quite simply to look at the different types of options that may be available. And I will be going on in a minute about some of the different types of taxes that are being looked at. But a question for you. So we introduced you just now to some of the principles behind the work of the tax structure work group. Which principle do you think is most important to you? You can enter that into the chat. Would that be fairness? Would that be stability? Would that be transparency? Or would that be adequacy? And so that is kind of again with fairness, I'll be coming on to that in a minute because there are a couple of different definitions of fairness. So I'm seeing fairness coming in from Randall, fairness from okay, from quite a few people are putting fairness into the chat there. All are equally important in society, and depends on the definition, says Katricia. Transparency, yeah. So anyway, so these four principles these are ultimately the idea, if you like, the agenda behind what has been going on is to look at these principles across parties. Thank you for your feedback there. And we will have more time for kind of open discussion in a minute, just as I finish this introductory part. So just to go into these definitions of fairness, and you can perhaps enter into what you think is a fair system into the chat. That, as it's just said in the video, there are two ideas of fairness, and those are really capacity to pay and consistency. Now, capacity is more around individuals and kind of individual taxpayers who, with higher incomes, paying a higher percentage of their incomes, those with lower incomes paying a lower percentage of their income in tax. Or consistency is another idea of fairness that the work group has been kind of working with, and that is that all individuals and taxpayers pay the same percent of their income or revenue on taxes regardless of their income. So because it's just important to point out there that the two different ideas of fairness there. Now, as things currently stand for the kind of Washington, the state's taxes for the going into the general fund, and all these taxes are related to the general fund. As things stands, 45% of the revenue is kind of generated from a general sales tax, 17% from the business and occupation tax, or B&O tax, and then kind of the property tax and other taxes make up other parts of the current kind of general fund. So just one last video to show you for this introduction here, and this is really about you know, how Washington State's taxes can be improved.
Under the current tax system, low-income and middle-income people pay a smaller amount of tax but a larger portion of their total income in taxes than higher-income people do. Higher-income people pay a larger amount of tax but a smaller portion of their total income in taxes than low-income and middle-income people. The Tax Structure Workgroup is discussing how to balance the capacity of an individual or business to pay tax and the consistency in the taxes that they pay. For example, the Tax Structure Workgroup is looking at ways to make Washington's state taxes fairer for people who live here by considering reductions to the property tax and sales tax and replacing this with alternatives like a wealth tax or income tax. People in Washington state already pay property taxes and sales taxes. As you know, property taxes are taxes on property, like a house or condo. Sales taxes are taxes on things people buy in stores or online. The work group is exploring a wealth tax, which would be a tax on financial property like stocks or bonds over $1 billion. The work group is also learning more about a personal income tax and a corporate income tax. A personal income tax would be a tax on the income people earn. A corporate income tax would be a tax on a business income after subtracting expenses and other costs. Remember, the group isn't looking to increase or decrease the total amount of tax money collected by the state, just looking at combinations of tax types that could generate the same amount of tax money. The group is only investigating different types of taxes with the goal of improving Washington's tax structure, not a change in overall tax revenue.
So,
under the current
so just a quick summing up, and then we'll go to some questions. I can read out some of the comments as well in the chat. So just a summary of an overview of the different ideas that have been looked into. The work group has looked into changing the property tax limit is kind of one thing that has been looked at. Also updating property tax and taxing personal wealth. Again, the details of this I'll be coming on to later. This is just an overview. And there's a question that just came through on the chat about this, is also looking, and again, these are just scenarios that we're looking into, the tax structure work group is looking into, replacing the B&O tax and adding basically with either a value-added tax or a margins tax, and potentially in combination with an employer compensation tax. And lastly, again, eliminating the B&O tax, reducing sales and property tax, and potentially putting, adding in a personal income tax and a corporate income tax. So those are the, that's the overall view, the 10,000-foot view of all the kind of the different things that have been looked at. And within that, we don't have a huge amount of time together today, but I'm just going to go to questions now. We just have like perhaps around kind of 5 minutes just for some questions that you may have. If you'd like to raise your hand, you can use the raise hand function just to ask a question. And we can also, we'll also be looking from the chat. So I'm just seeing here just some comments in the chat that will the tax group be looking at the B&O taxes? Yes, so yes, it is. And so I don't know if any, Morgan, if there are any questions that are coming up in the chat that you would like to address.
No, these are good questions and great comments. Thanks, everybody. I think I see a general set of questions about what these taxes are. So let's just kind of move forward here. And we've got some explanations on these ideas. And I think to simplify them the most, to kind of maybe give Andy a sort of a segue here. The tax structure work group is really asking kind of three questions. The first question is, how should we think about taxing property in the state of Washington? And that's mostly through maybe how the current property tax is collected, and also whether or not financial wealth should be considered a form of property under property taxation. The second question is, what should we really do to potentially replace the B&O? The B&O, has faced criticisms that it is not the fairest tax, in the sense that its basis is on gross receipts and not on profitability, or allows deductions for components of production. So there are a few ideas around potential improvements to that, and so people want to know if people whether think that's a good idea or not. And then the last question is really about, should we tax income? And that's mostly through some combination of reducing or eliminating certain taxes and replacing them with a personal income and corporate income tax. So that's kind of a quick overview. I know Andy will cover that, but I think thanks everybody for those questions. You're getting right to the meat of it.
Sounds great. Thank you. Thanks, Morgan. So just continuing. So one of the scenarios that has been looked at has been kind of looking into updating the property tax to address adequacy. Now, as things stand, the property tax is a tax on land and buildings, and there's a 1% growth limit by law. So the annual growth of property tax revenues is limited to 1%, but that is not including local levies. So one thing that the work group has looked into is really looking at the state property tax would increase in line with the economy's growth. So following the number of people living in Washington state and inflation. So that is one idea that has been looked into. So just around that, what do you think is a better limit on how much property tax revenues can grow? Would you could enter this into the chat, you could raise a hand if you'd like to make a comment as well. Would you, one, kind of agree with the current system, or would you, two, agree with the revised limit, which would be based on the growth of population or inflation, or would you, three, were you not sure about that? So you could enter that into the chat if you'd like. What do you think? So I see Ray is saying 3, so not quite sure. Current systems coming through from Peter Fricks there. And we've got a couple of people stating their preference for a revised system as well. Another person saying they're not sure. And somebody else saying, so Brian there saying, aligning with the state's costs, inflation, population makes a lot of sense. But I can see a variety of opinion there, which is fantastic. So with the time we have, I'm just going to kind of continue onto a next scenario that we have. And again, this is updating the property tax and taxing personal wealth to address the issue of fairness. So here, rather than the current property tax revenue, the way it's collected, there would be an exemption included for the first £250,000 of a person's primary residence. So an exemption, a tax exemption for the first $250,000 of a person's primary residence, and then in addition to that, to make up for to make sure that there's still adequacy for the kind of revenue that's being brought in. There's also adding a wealth tax, so that would be a 1% tax on financial property, stocks and bonds. Though the first $1 billion would be exempt from this. So under this system, which do you think is fairer? You could enter the kind of answer into the chat. You could raise your hand if you'd like to talk as well. Which do you think is fairer? Would you maintain the current property tax, or would you add a wealth tax and decrease the current property tax. And I'm seeing quite a few people saying maintain. Richard there is saying this is all about trust. Okay, so legislators want to spend more. Okay, it's not giving them more tools to expand revenue. So I'm seeing concerns about, and you know, the aim of the tax structure work, just to reiterate, isn't to decrease or increase the amount of revenue that tax is collected. It is to so just worth emphasizing that, but I'm seeing quite a lot of people saying maintaining there, other people saying tax wealth if it maintains enough revenue. So thank you for all that feedback and comments. And I have a colleague of mine on this call who is kind of writing a lot of this down, this feedback down. So this is kind of really useful in terms of informing the tax structure work group. So under another scenario, and this is really kind of we're moving forward a little bit with this question. And here we're looking into introducing a corporate tax and a personal income tax to address stability. So within this kind of scenario, the overall idea, the bigger picture is that with the current tax structure, we have a lot of money being, as I showed in that kind of pie chart a little bit earlier on, a lot of taxes being collected from the B&O tax, sales tax, and property tax. Now, overall in this scenario, there would potentially be an elimination of the B&O tax, a reduction in sales, and a reduction in property tax, and an introduction in a corporate income tax and a personal income tax. I'm just going to be focusing on this part of it for the moment. Later in the presentation, I can come back. I'll be looking at this other part of this scenario. Now, the idea here is that there would be a tax on the income people earn. And this could either be a progressive tax. This could be done in a progressive way as a person. So as a person's tax increases, their tax rate would increase, or a flat rate as well, flat tax as well. So all people's income would be taxed at the same flat rate. So under this, this would be basically the change kind of in this scenario. I'm seeing one person saying from Ray saying progressive there, and so a question I have here for you is, what do you think is fairer? Do you think it's fairer to have a flat income tax or a progressive income tax? What's your opinion? So you can enter that into the chat. Which do you think is fairer? And again, these are related to these two different, partly these two different ideas of definitions of fairness. So capacity to pay and consistency. So seeing neither everyone has to pay taxes. With progressive rates, too many get exempted. I'm seeing some really great feedback here. Thank you for all of this. Income tax in addition to property and sales tax makes Washington the trifecta of taxation. Saying that's another one there. And Jeff there stating opinion, no income tax, but progressive if needed. So just going on from that, another kind of opinion that we've seeking feedback is that which do you think would be fairer? Do you think it would be fairer to maintain the current sales and property taxes, or would you decrease sales and property taxes and add a progressive income tax? So which out of these options do you think is fairer? And again, I'm partly just giving you these different options to get your feedback, but we're not noting this down in a kind of a binary way, one versus the other necessarily. We're just trying to weigh up all these different options. And I'm saying, so no income tax from Robert and Kim Moore there, and I'm seeing quite a few people saying maintain. So Thank you for that. Okay, and Rebecca Wolf is saying decrease property tax and build in a personal income tax. So, okay, so thank you for that kind of variety of opinion. Just because we don't have a huge amount of time together, I'm going to keep going on. So another option here would you think it would be fairer to maintain the current sales and property tax, or on the other hand, decrease sales and property tax, but instead of having a progressive one, having a flat income tax? Which one? So maintains coming through. So I'm seeing an opinion there from property taxes are crazy and cause a lot of the population moving to other states. Do away with sales tax altogether from Ray, kind of came through as well. And William has actually said, yeah, decrease sales and property, add flat income and wealth stroke luxury taxes. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments about that? If you have any more, or perhaps Morgan, are there any more technical things that you're seeing that are coming on you would like to address? I can see we've got around 15 minutes left of the presentation. I can go a little bit longer. If I'm
let's move to kind of the question around the B&O. I see some questions about the difference between a B&O and a corporate income tax. People want to know a little bit about a VAT. So I think let's move to the B&O replacements.
Sounds great. So a quick introduction here and to the work the tax structure work group has been looking into.
Right now, all businesses in Washington pay a business and occupation tax, or B&O tax. That tax is based on the total amount of income the business receives, regardless of the amount of profit the business actually makes. The amount of profit that different businesses make at the end of the day after paying all their expenses can vary greatly, even within the same type of business. Think about the difference between a small family-owned store versus a large big box store. That means that the B&O tax can be tough on small businesses, startup businesses, and businesses with small profit margins. The Tax Structure Work Group is considering alternatives to the B&O tax that would tax a business's total profit rather than the total income a business takes in. There are a few alternatives that the work group is exploring, and let's take them one by one. A value-added tax is a tax on the difference between the value of a business's sales and how much it costs them to create their products. For example, if this lemonade stand sold lemonade for $3, but it only cost $1 to make, then the lemonade stand owner would pay taxes on that $2 difference. An employer compensation tax is a tax that a business would pay on total employee compensation, meaning salary, commission, and bonuses, that's greater than $150,000 per year. This would only apply to businesses with annual worldwide compensation payments to employees totaling more than $7 million. A corporate income tax is a tax based on how much income a business made after expenses. This tax could be flat, meaning all business income would be taxed at the same flat rate, or progressive, meaning as their income increased, their tax rate would also increase. Lastly, a margins tax. That allows a business to subtract certain expenses from the total amount of money it makes and then pay tax on that remaining amount. The work group is exploring all these different types of taxes: the B&O tax, value-added tax, employer compensation tax, corporate income tax, and margins tax.
So a lot of different options are being looked at here. And so a lot of these are looking at eliminating the B&O tax as a tax on all of the gross income coming into a company, and replacing them with one or a combination of the value-added tax, employer compensation tax, corporate tax, or margins tax. So as I kind of said earlier on, I'm just seeing a couple of comments have kind of come through that are probably worth pointing out. One comment is a decreased sales tax, but add in a VAT or VAT as in European nations. I'm seeing coming on, and some opinions about kind of no margins tax, which are kind of rife with loophole probabilities. So the value added tax would be the business tax on the value of, the tax on the value a business adds to goods or services it sells. A margins tax would be, I think the margins tax actually looks across the whole business, and businesses have kind of an option to subtract certain expenses from the total amount a business makes and only pay tax on the remaining amount of income. So these are the, so ultimately within this, rather than paying a lower percentage of tax on total revenue as it currently have with the B&O tax, instead of that, there would be a higher percentage tax on a smaller amount. So which do you think would be fairer, the B&O tax or a margins tax? Which do you think would be fairer? You can just enter that into the chat. A B&O or a margins tax. So I'm seeing Doug coming in from saying a margins tax. Okay, from Sonia, don't understand it enough. It's the side margin, depends on what is included. Margin from Brian there. It seems businesses may be able to find ways to reduce their taxable amount if I do a margins tax. Okay, and I'm seeing some concern for kind of retail sales taxes suffer from several enforcement problems. Concern coming in from William there. Oh, but a point there perhaps is it cannot fiddle the B&O tax, Richard. So thank you. Which do you think is fairer? Again, so a B&O or a value added tax? So a wide variety of things could be used. So instead of a margin tax, a value added tax were introduced, what do you think is fairer? Or VAT, quite a few people pro VAT or VAT. Okay, and a point here I think from Mark is around why is fair the standard, why not effective? So okay, need more details about it. Okay, and it depends on the tax rate, how it relates to federal business income tax. Okay, fair comments. So another thing that could be introduced and is that the work group has looked at is an employer compensation tax. Now, this would only apply to businesses that in total generate more than $7 million in payroll, and the tax calculated on these employees that receive a kind of compensation of more than $150,000 a year. And so, and by the way, just to reiterate, the idea of today is that this is a kind of a general conversation about all these things that have been looked into. But as I'll be coming on to in a minute, we do have a survey which you could fill out if you really want your want more of your voice to be heard, and also tax town halls as well coming up. Pauline, my colleague, has just added in a survey link there that you could always fill out there. So with the, as I just said, the employer compensation tax, there could be one scenario that has been looked at has been replacing the B&O tax with either a combination, either the value added tax or the margins tax in combination with an employer compensation tax to address fairness. which do you think would be fairer? So would you think it would be fairer just to have a value-added tax or a margins tax revenue? Or would you prefer for there to be a combination of either, that would be either the VAT or the margins tax combined with the employer compensation tax? Which do you think would be fairer? I'm seeing quite a few people. So Steve's saying the combination, you know, VAT or margin, VAT. Quite a few people saying that. Okay, and concern about spending in the legislature coming through from Richard there. Fair would be a limit on total spending of the legislature. VAT margin, so quite a few people expressing their preference here for a VAT margin tax. Actually, Gary, I just wanted to check in about how we're doing for time. So it's 12 minutes past 9. What time should I be planning on going till? Because I think you said this was originally billed as kind of 45 minutes, but it seems like how much time will you need for wrap up and stuff?
Yeah, about 5 minutes for wrap up. So about 9:25 is usually cool.
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
Check in about that. So just moving on in terms of these scenarios from this economic research that's been carried out. Another thing that's been looked at is a corporate income tax. This would address personal income tax and be addressing the issue of the principle of stability. So under the corporate income tax, this would be a tax on how much a business made after expenses, as opposed to the B&O tax. So this could either be a progressive tax, so businesses with higher incomes would pay more, businesses, lower ones would pay less, or a flat tax, so all businesses would be taxed at the same rate. So just be great to get your opinion on that idea that has been looked into. I'm saying flat is easier to budget for a business. There's one thing coming through from Robert and Kim Moore. So which is your opinion about the corporate income tax? Do you think that would be, do you think it's fairer for it to have a progressive tax rate, or would you think it's fairer to be combined for it to be done at a flat tax rate? So I'm seeing, coming through, okay, so a point here from Richard is that corporations pass tax to people in higher prices. Robert and Kim saying a flat would reduce loopholes. So I think a really, really good point there. Rebecca in favor of a progressive corporate income tax, and Mark saying neither. Yes, so and Linda with this point, which quite a few people agree with here, which is the main thing, would be to reduce the loopholes. So, and I just read it. So from Brian, so flat for corporate, 2 factories that produce a combined 1,000 widgets could pay the same as 1 factory that produces 1,000 widgets. So yeah, thank you for that. So we're coming to the end of the presentation here. Thank you so much for your feedback. This is fantastic, by the way. Really, really good. This is what's needed for the work group needs is your feedback. So, and so another kind of part of the scenario that's been kind of looked at here is, the idea of the kind of corporate income tax. And so, which do you think would be fairer? So another kind of which you think would be fairer. the B&O tax or a corporate income tax with a flat tax rate. I think we've already had quite a few people state their a variety of opinions have already come through, but do you think if we then compared the current B&O tax with the corporate income tax with a flat tax rate, which would you prefer? I've seen quite a few people saying 2. I presume that means the corporate income tax with a flat tax rate, corporate with a flat tax there. So that is a preferred to the B&O tax. Oh, before I move on, sorry, I'm going to let more things come through. Corporate with a flat, for small corporations with flat. Yeah, okay. So quite a few preferences for this one, and then a progressive tax rate. So, what's your opinion? Which do you think would be fairer? Would you think it'd be fairer to either have the B&O tax or the corporate income tax with a progressive? Okay, but so quite a few people, it's interesting, quite a few people favoring B&O, perhaps I'm assuming that might be because of the simplicity. So thank you for the, okay, really interesting feedback there. And quite a few people also saying corporate tax with progressive. So thank you for your comments. So just before I can see we've got about kind of 7 minutes left. I will be doing a wrap up in a minute. I'm just going to ask Morgan or Valerie or Braden if there are any comments that have come up there that you'd more technical comments, technical issues. This has been a fantastic group. You've been very productive. But is there any major things that you would like to highlight, pick up on?
Yeah, there's a couple things I'll just chime in here. So one, there are many questions about sort of what are the administrative costs to the state here to implement these different, if we move away from it. Obviously, I would say the answer is that's yet to be decided. And part of the idea here is just to test ideas, but I would say the way to think about that is the state already has some apparatus within the B&O tax, right? And so the further away from the B&O tax structure we move on the business side, the more likely, right, there are going to be significant sort of administrative needs to deal with those changes. So if we move to an income tax, perhaps, right, both a personal and corporate one, that's very different than our current taxation system. So it's not unreasonable to think that there will also be a need to sort of adjust and make those changes. There are many questions around, I don't know how to think about these things. I need more detail. I placed a link in the chat. I will bump it in there right now again. Pauline's already on top of that. Look at that. There's some great resources on the website that will help you sort of better understand this. They are obviously the videos that provide some basic introduction to these ideas. You will see there is a tax calculator there that is meant to help people understand how maybe these taxes would change your current household tax burden for state taxes. In the coming days here, we'll also have a version for businesses. So you understand how different kinds of businesses, maybe not your business, but different kinds of businesses may be impacted around their tax payments, given these ideas. So it's meant to help you understand if, my gross receipts go up, if my profits go down, if my cost of goods goes up, how does it change my tax incidence? So look to that. And then I will say here, I know we don't have a tax policy, right? Is definitely a policy conversation where the details matter greatly. I do encourage everyone to attend our tax town halls, where they will be attended not just by other members in your community, but also a range of state and local elected officials who are going there to listen to your comments as well. And we'll have more time to talk about these taxes in a little more detail and a little more intimacy. So, and then the last one, I think Pauline will also pop it in there. Once you feel like you have a good understanding, do please take the tax survey. The tax structure work group will be obviously hearing this feedback that we've gotten today, but they also want to hear it more individually. And we have some sort of very basic survey questions, but also some room for you to provide a little more color and feedback about sort of why you may favor the B&O over a VAT, or why a margins looks appealing relative to the B&O. And they want to hear that feedback going forward. So I'll turn it back to Andy to help close us out here.
Thanks a lot, Morgan. So so that online survey has just been put in the chat. Pauline just put that in the chat. So have a look at that. So just to wrap up the next steps. So yes, so we have this online survey. Please take that and make your views known. It's really vital that the work group collects as much opinion from Washingtonians as possible, looking into all these different scenarios. Going forward, there are going to be multilingual sessions as well, explaining this in multiple languages: Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Russian, Korean, and Vietnamese. And so you can check the website for dates in October. This is of interest to a friend or colleague. And as Morgan had stated, I think there are tax town halls coming up. All of these details are there on the website. Do take part in a tax town hall. These are being held on Wednesdays in October, and the last one at the beginning of November. So so have a look at that. And with that, I am going to wrap up and perhaps hand things back. I don't know if Gary, if there are any comments that you've seen from any of your members who you'd like to highlight, or anything else like that, or
I'm not seeing any, Andy, but I think we had a robust conversation with your help, and I really appreciate you leading us through this. As you can see, Rebecca says it was a superb presentation, and so a round of applause for you and everyone else involved for being open to participate on this level. We will share this on our social media as well as our newsletter and beyond. So Andy, I'd like to thank you and your organization, and also the Department of Revenue participants who joined us today as well. I do have one update that is just this is kind of hot off the presses. So everybody remembers, if you join the coffee chats, you might get some breaking news from us. So today I have the pleasure of highlighting one of our new additions to the Economic Alliance Snohomish County team. And that is our new government relations lead, who is Misha Lugin, who is on here somewhere. Misha, oh, there she is. So Misha, if you just want to say a few words, this is a topic obviously of importance to our business community. So I just want to bring you a warm welcome to the Economic Alliance team. And if you want to say hello to folks, you can unmute.
Hello, everyone. I have seen some of your faces before, and I'm happy to see them again. Some new faces as well. So really excited to be on board. And, it was great listening to the thoughts folks had to share, and excited to be a part of the team. So thank you all for having me. It's nice to meet you.
All right. Thank you, Misha. We are excited to have you as well. Okay, folks, so this has been another amazing Coffee Chats opportunity. I know Katie's going to queue up probably our next item that we have coming up. And yes, so we are going to dive in on October 5th at 8:30 a.m. on urban vitality. That's right. And so please, if you've received the invitation from Katie and our team, please go ahead and sign up for that. We will be bringing more of these in the future to our social share as well, where you can have a Facebook Live feed to it as well, but we haven't quite selected the one to lead that off with. But on October 14th at 9 a.m. is our public officials event. And so please, if you are one of those who are participating in that effort, we really appreciate your involvement and engagement there. Again, October 14th, 9 a.m., public officials. And so I think, Katie, if we can go back to a full screen with everyone to allow for everyone's faces to be seen. You can remove my spotlight. Everyone knows what's coming here, but I want to make sure that we allow everyone to join here. Let's remove Misha's spotlight as well. Can everyone see everyone yet? I don't know. Everyone's good? Okay. Okay. In solidarity as Snohomish County businesses and leaders, I want to thank you all for joining us again for a Coffee Chats moment with Economic Alliance Snohomish County. And as you have an amazing day, please raise up your coffee cups or drinks. And please have an amazing day. Thank you all. Take care.